Hi there, folks. This is Shawn Willsey, Geology professor, with you, providing another update on the ongoing situation in Iceland. Today is Sunday, November 12th. It is about 9:20 a.m. Mountain Standard Time here where I am in Idaho, and I suppose in Iceland then it is about 4:20 or so in the afternoon. Um, Appreciate all the people that have been supporting what I've been doing here and had lots of good comments. So I appreciate that. I want to welcome any new viewers and subscribers, and also want to be transparent about who I am and a little bit of my background, and then we'll get into some updates and some forecasts that I put together. So I'm a geology professor here in Idaho. I love Iceland. I've visited the location 4 times, including a trip in 2022 to see the eruption taking place in August, and then I was recently just there in May of this year, 2023. And so this is something I would be doing anyway, is looking at the data, keeping abreast of the latest developments. And so I thought I would also just share my opinions and expertise, and but more importantly, the facts and the data that's been delivered to us with you as best I can. So hopefully that's helpful. I like to just learn and share, and so that's sort of my approach. So let's get right down to the update here. Let's start with um, the update from the Icelandic Met Office, which is, and this is maybe about 5 or 6 hours. This is the most recent update here. So, 1,000 earthquakes or so from this intrusion of magma that's come up over the last few days. It's about 15 kilometers long. That's about 9 miles. And it runs right through the western side of Grindavik, the town that's there. Let's see a couple of the highlights here. Seismic activity remains fairly constant. There's been about 1,000 earthquakes recorded with it, but most of them been below magnitude 3. So that's an important point to make, is that we're seemingly past the strongest shaking and the most intense earthquake activity, which have already produced quite a bit of damage in Grindavik. I'll show you a few photos here in a minute or two. Most of the earthquakes are at fairly shallow depths and seem to be related to, again, this magma body pushing its way upwards and laterally outwards and breaking rocks. But now that it's closer to the surface, it doesn't seem to be propagating laterally and expanding as much, but it seems to show that it's moving closer to the surface. And so they're going to run some more models, so we'll probably get some more data on that later. Another important point here, I've had a lot of people wondering about, like, the people. The evacuation seems to have gone very smoothly. They've got everyone out of harm's way. All those people are now with family, friends, or in an evacuation center, so that's great news. They did decide to let some people back into a certain area on the east side of town. Let me show you where that is, way over here. So not a lot of homes, not the main part of town, but they did decide to let a few people back into this area to gather a few more things, get some pets, that sort of thing. So not sure exactly, if that's taken place or if it's still ongoing, but that's a little bit of an update there. And again, I'm just doing the best I can from a remote location. So lots of concern about everything that's going on there, but it looks like folks are doing okay. And here's where we get to sort of the crux of the whole thing, is that the clock is ticking. We've got people out of harm's way. We know there's this threat, this volcanic threat that exists. And now it's just a matter of what is it going to do. And in many respects, this is the trickiest situation to be in. Unlike a hurricane or a tornado, where you can see it coming, you take precautions, and then it happens and it maybe wreaks havoc and causes damage, but then it's over, right? The tornado dissipates, the hurricane comes ashore and weakens. Even an earthquake, I mean, an earthquake will catch you by surprise, and you get that big, strong shaking and maybe some residual aftershocks, but the event is over. The big damaging part of that natural event has come and gone. And here we're left with this tricky situation where we've got the evacuation. We know we've got this very imminent volcanic threat, but we don't know when it's going to occur. And so as the hours and maybe even days go by, that's where this becomes really, really kind of tricky. Let me show you real quick. I neglected to show you just the earthquake data. These are all ones and twos over the last 12 hours. So you can see, yeah, the earthquakes are still happening and they're still delineating nicely the location of this magma body, but we don't see any of the bigger quakes. If I switch this to threes and above, they're gone. So there have been no magnitude threes, which would be the threshold typically that we'd see for people to feel them. And so a little bit of the seismic data there. So what I want to do with the most of this update is walk you through some possible scenarios as I see it, and maybe I haven't thought through all the different permutations. So this is just my professional opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. But I think right now there's really four possible outcomes, at least that I see. And so the first possibility would be some sort of a submarine eruption or underwater eruption in generally this area here. So these are just kind of cartoon zones I put together. So if we get the magma rising to the surface at this southwest end of this magma body, of this intrusion or this dike, if you will, then we would have magma or lava, in this case, interacting with the seawater. And this would be a pretty explosive eruption. This would actually cause the water to be heated very quickly with that 2000 Fahrenheit, 1200 degree, 1400 degrees Celsius magma lava would heat up the ocean water, flash that to steam. That's an expansion process, and that would actually take that lava that's erupting on the seafloor, fragment and shred it, and that would generate ash. And so this type of an eruption would generate ash. However, it would be pretty localized. So this is not the same as a powerful stratovolcano like Mount St. Helens or Pinatubo in the Philippines or something like that erupting in terms of its magma composition. It's still the same magma composition. It's basaltic, it's runny, it's hot, it's typically non-explosive lava, but because it's interacting with the water in this case, it would generate explosive conditions. In some respects, I wonder if this maybe is, if it's going to erupt, I wonder if this is maybe the best option for the town, because depending on exactly where it is, the town would get showered with ash and larger size rocks, pieces of scoria, like kind of maybe fist size, but very lightweight because there'd be a lot of gas bubbles in them. Rocks would settle in around the town, and there definitely could be some damage from all that ash. There would be some cleanup that would involved, but the houses and homes should remain mostly intact. Again, this depends on so many variables, like how long does it go on? If it buries the town in, you know, 10 meters of ash, then that's pretty tricky. But it's a possibility. So that's one possible eruption there. Obviously, an eruption down here probably doesn't have a huge impact on the Blue Lagoon or the power plant in terms of completely compromising those locations. And we've seen eruptions like this in Iceland in the past. And so some of you might know, if you know your Icelandic volcanic history, there's a island off the coast of the south coast called Surtsey, and it's south of the Isle of Heimaey. And this erupted in 1963, and I just wanted to show you just what this actually kind of looks like. So this was an eruption on the seafloor that eventually grew closer to the surface of the ocean, produced a lot of ash, as you can kind of see here, and eventually all that volcanic material, it erupted so much material that it built up an actual island above the ocean. And so it depends on how much material you're erupting. If you don't have that much material erupting, the waves and the sea action can quickly erode that material. But this island still exists today, and I guess it's about 60 years old, 1963. And so that's one possibility there, is something like that. So there's one area of that we could see a scenario playing out here where an eruption at the southwest end produces a explosive eruption, could impact air quality, could impact the operations of the airport. It would depend on the winds. How much ash would it produce? It depends on how big of a supply of magma we're looking at that's interacting with the water. And it could produce an island or even a peninsula off the coast, or just more land attached to the south coast of Iceland here. And again, this is all just possible scenarios. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. So there's one area and one possible scenario that could play out. Let's look at another possible scenario. So if we go to this other area here, area 2, so if we had an eruption in this region along this magma body here, this would be obviously devastating for Grindavik. So we would have fissures opening up somewhere in this region, possibly even under the town. We'd have lava inundating the area. This would be possibly jeopardizing the harbor. This would be a really bad situation for Grindavik. But because it's further downhill than the Blue Lagoon or the power plant, those locations would most likely be spared any serious impacts from an eruption down here. So that's another possible scenario. A third area, so if we go further up the system, if we had an eruption in this area, now we're looking at impacts into the power plant and the Blue Lagoon region, and probably also into Grindavik itself. If we look at some of these craters down in here, these have produced lavas that have flowed to the west over towards the Blue Lagoon and where the power plant are. There's lava that's spilled through this little gap or saddle through here, and lava has flowed down to the southwest and down into the town and off in this direction. And again, this would all depend on exactly where the vents open up. If the vents open up here and are directing most of their lava to the south or slightly to the east, then maybe you get a lot of that lava kind of pooling up over in this region, in this valley, and maybe some of it heads down along this channel here, this previous path, and heads over into this area, and you can spare some of the town. But all those are just the little variables that we just don't know at this time. So, and then the fourth eruption, or the fourth possible scenario, is no eruption. And so we have no eruption at all for now. And it's maybe not likely at this point given all the data that we've seen, but that's still very much a possibility and something that's still on the books. And so we'll just really have to see how all of this plays out. And so the last thing I want to conclude with here is all of this has really reminded me in some way a lot of similarities I'm seeing between what we're seeing taking place in Iceland and what happened in 2018 in Hawaii. And I was actually in Hawaii during this eruption in 2018. It's a different system. There's some big differences that we could discuss, but the overall situation is somewhat similar. And so if you remember anything about this eruption in 2018, here's the Kilauea summit up here. And this is a nice little video. I'll add this link. This was put together by the National Park Service, just basically a summary of this. And I'll keep it muted just so I can give you a little bit of narration here. And I'll only show a little, maybe a minute or two of this. But the magma moved from the area it had resided and moved down into the lower East Rift Zone, which is this zone here that had eruptions in the past, but hadn't seen much action for quite some time. And in that intervening time, there'd been neighborhoods built over it and other structures. But it started out with earthquakes, just like we saw here in Iceland. So they saw the earthquakes coming first, indicating that the magma had moved into this part of the volcanic system. And then the next thing, after a few days, some of these fissures started opening up right here in this subdivision called Leilani Estates. And so we literally had these eruptions of low viscosity lava. You can see they just started numbering the fissures as they started opening. Here's some of the streets in the neighborhood here. Red lines are some of the highways. You can see the coastline off here in the lower right. And they just named each or numbered each fissure as they came in, as they evolved. And so this again was in May of 2018. So you can see the fissures coming in sequentially, opening up. Some produced a little bit of lava, some produced more, but completely did some terrible damage to the houses. You can see some of the steam and gases coming out of the cracks in the road. The area was obviously shut down, evacuated. People were out of harm's way. There's a lava flow opening up across the road. And then we had up to 20 fissures, but you can see the alignment here. Whoops, go back a little bit. You can see the alignment here. They also had a geothermal power plant. The Puna Geothermal Venture power plant was at risk from this eruption as well. And then the red is starting to show where the lava flows went. So some of these fissures only produced a little bit of lava and inundated parts of the neighborhood. Others produced a little bit more. Eventually, the system grew, and then eventually some of the fissures kind of came and went. But over time, there was one specific fissure that they'll get to here in a second. So there's some rocks actually being thrown out of the vent there. So this was locally explosive. You can see some of the rocks falling back down around the vent. And then they started heading down, some of these lava flows started heading down towards the coast. And eventually, I don't know if they're going to show this here or not, I think they will. Some of the fissures had become pretty large and fed some fairly active lava channels. Then those lava channels actually made it to the ocean, which produced again explosive conditions where that lava went into the water. And this is the thing I was looking for here. Fissure 8 became the dominant fissure. And this was about when I was there. I was here maybe about a week later in early June. And Fissure 8 was the primary vent for this eruption. It was just cranking out an immense amount of lava over the next few weeks. And again, those lava flows reached all the way down to a little housing area called Kapoho. And it actually turned a bay, completely filled a bay that had a coral reef community or just a really pretty place. Yeah, there's Kapoho Bay. There's the advancing lava flow there. You can see some of the homes in there. And then here's that flow front, that lava flow going right into the bay. Now you've got not just steam from the water flashing to steam, but you've got this steam plume has acidic gases in it. So you have hydrochloric acid and sulfuric acid in this. So this is some pretty toxic gases that are coming out of this. Just a really hazardous location along these ocean front or lava ocean entry points here. So this is Kapoho Bay on June 4th, and that was about the time I was there. I didn't actually get to see the Kapoho thing happen myself, but I was in the area. And then you can see where it pushed out a little bit further and built out some of the land here. Just go a little bit further with this. Yeah, so it built out a lot of land, and so this was how more land was added to Hawaii. So anyway, I thought that was interesting, just thinking about some of the similarities there between what's taken place in Iceland and then looking at this eruption that occurred in 2018 in Hawaii. And again, we don't know exactly how this is going to play out. Lots of options on the table, but interesting to think about. So a couple variables here. We don't know if this is going to erupt from a single vent or multiple vents. It's possible that more than one of these areas I delineated here become active. Doesn't mean they'll all be active at the same time, but you could have two of them active for a while and maybe that one shuts down. There's just all sorts of options that still exist. We also don't know how much volume of lava is actually going to be erupted and what rate it will be erupting onto the surface. Those are big variables that really will indicate how this thing plays out. I did look at the 2018 Hawaii eruption in terms of how much lava it produced, and it was about 1.4 cubic kilometers of lava that were pumped to the surface during that eruptive period. That lasted about 4 months, and interestingly, it compares really nicely with the 2014 eruption of Bardarbunga, which is a volcano east of this area here in Iceland, and it produced exactly the same amount of lava, and that went for about 6 months. But that was in a big uninhabited region of Iceland, and so it didn't have as much of an impact on infrastructure and that sort of thing. And then lastly, I forgot to throw these in, but I had a viewer share with me some photos that she got from friends and also things off of Facebook. So Sigurður Elsa sent me some pictures from Grindavik, and so I wanted to just share a couple of the photos of some of the damage. You might have seen this one. This is the golf course just west of town, and so these are all damage from the earthquakes, especially the ones that were happening on probably Thursday into Friday and maybe a little bit into Saturday. So here's part of a house, and you can see that the walls here have actually been separated, and some of the putty between the walls kind of being stretched out. Similar view here between these two adjacent buildings. So some of the damage there, the roadways, some of the cracks that are opening up. So as this magma is pushing up, it's actually forcing the land apart. And so you're getting shaking from the earthquake and also the propagation of the magma that's causing some of that as well. So hopefully that's helpful though. I will put together another update as things evolve, but I just wanted to share these possible scenarios. Again, not meant to be alarming, but just the way things might go at this point. Just being trying to be level-headed about the whole thing, thinking about it practically. Super grateful that everyone is safe for now, and we'll just have to see what Mother Nature throws at us next. But if again anything I know about the Icelandic people, they're resilient, they're smart, and they'll be okay. So until next time, thanks so much. Thanks for joining me, and take care.